You have a president of the United States who's not all with us, and everybody knows it at this point. There's a new Harvard-Harris poll out today. This is the second poll in 2 days showing Joe Biden in the high 30s. According to that Harvard-Harris poll, Biden's job approval overall is 38%. On the economy, 33%. On immigration, 32%. On foreign affairs, 33%. On crime, 33%. On inflation, 28%. Those are horrendous numbers. Those numbers are vicious and brutal for Joe Biden. And that's the second poll in 2 days that has him in the 30s. According to the Washington Post, Biden will deliver his State of the Union address on Tuesday to a deeply pessimistic nation, one that largely sees the economy worsening under his watch, disapproves of his leadership on key issues, and prefers that Republicans control Congress after the November elections, according to a Washington Post ABC News poll. That poll finds Biden's presidential approval rating at 37%, 55% saying they disapprove. Overall, 44% say they strongly disapprove. 61% of independents rate him negatively. Only 77% of Democrats give Biden positive marks. That is a bad number right there. Asked whether they would prefer the next Congress to be in the hands of Republicans acting as a check against Biden or in the Democratic hands to support Biden's priorities, 50% say they'd rather have Republicans in charge, 40% for the Democrats. That's a plus 10 for the Republicans. Asked how they would vote today, 49% of registered voters said they would support the Republicans, 42% Democrats. For comparison, ahead of the 2018 midterms, where Democrats scored big gains, Democrats had a 7-point advantage on the same question. Now, the media are trying to spin this into some sort of victory for Joe Biden. They're suggesting that things are likely to change when it comes to Ukraine, that Joe Biden's leadership here is really going to be well respected. But that's not right. Most Americans are not looking at this and thinking Joe Biden is strong. They're thinking that Vladimir Putin thinking Joe Biden is weak is a reflection of all of us. We all think that Joe Biden is pretty weak at this point. George Stephanopoulos pushed Jen Psaki on a poll, came out yesterday saying that Americans think that Biden is really not all there.
The president is approaching his State of the Union in a pretty difficult political position right now. 37% approval rating. Democrats trailing badly in the midterm polling. A majority in our recent poll out this morning even questioned the president's mental capacity. How is he going to turn that around on Tuesday night? And how much has his State of the Union been changed by this war in Ukraine?
And if you look back when President Obama gave his first State of the Union, it was during the worst financial crisis in a generation. When President Bush gave his first State of the Union, it was shortly after 9/11. Leaders lead during crises. That's exactly what President Biden is doing.
Okay, yeah, there's a difference you may have noticed. Joe Biden caused all of these crises. That's the part that Jen Psaki won't talk about. We've talked about the worst first year in presidential history. If you're going to go worst first years in presidential history, it's Abraham Lincoln, who actually had a Civil War breakout. That wasn't his fault. That Civil War broke out effectively upon him taking office. Worst first years include JFK. Some of that was self-inflicted, but not close to as bad as Joe Biden. You might have to say George W. Bush because 9/11 happens his first year in office. Again, exogenous event, external event caused not by him. Every problem that Joe Biden is currently suffering from is a problem of Joe Biden's own making, and the American people know it. He made these problems happen. Joe Biden made what is happening right now in Ukraine happen in large part with his pullout from Afghanistan, which he triumphantly announced as a victory, despite the fact that Americans were murdered, that millions of people will starve this winter because of him, that hundreds of thousands of women are now living under sexual predation, and tens of thousands will probably be sold into sex slavery. That's because of Joe Biden. Inflation is because of Joe Biden. That 40-year inflation is not just a supply chain problem. It is a supply and demand issue that is created by blowing out the budget and loose monetary policy from the Fed. Every major problem that Joe Biden is currently the border crisis is a Joe Biden problem. It has been exacerbated wildly by Biden's ascension to the office. All of these problems are Joe Biden problems. So when she says he's responding to the crisis, no, Joe Biden is the crisis. And the American people know that. And so this attempt to spin him into a masterful leader, a masterful world, like no one believes this. No, by the way, I do have to mention here, the State of the Union address, which is supposed to happen tomorrow, it's pretty amazing. I suggested a while ago that I would not be surprised if there was a mask removal that happened directly before the State of the Union so that Joe Biden could go out there and say he had defeated COVID. Now, of course, that's really, really silly. Joe Biden did not defeat COVID. Omicron defeated COVID. Omicron defeated COVID by getting everyone who didn't already have natural immunity infected, and many people who already had vax immunity, natural immunity. So everybody at this point has either natural or vax immunity. That's because of Omicron. It has nothing to do with Joe Biden, who's been incompetent all the way throughout COVID, more people have died under his watch with a working vaccine than died under Donald Trump without a working vaccine. So what's happening? The U.S. Capitol attending physician said on Sunday, masks will be optional on Capitol Hill starting the day before Joe Biden is to deliver his State of the Union address. Why? Because Joe Biden didn't want the spectacle of a bunch of people in the audience wearing masks while the rest of the country is already on masks because we're already done, because we've been done in some parts of the country for a year. Joe Biden didn't want to look ridiculous. And so magically, the science changed just in time for the State of the Union, which of course underscores the fact that it was never about the science for the Democrats in the first place. And they've been cramming down these ridiculous measures on Americans by the millions, by the hundreds of millions, depending on where you live. They've been doing this for no reason other than politics. And Joe Biden just underscored that. So once again, the attempt to kind of draw victory from the jaws of defeat for the Biden administration, good luck with that. No one believes it, nor should they. I hope you enjoyed that clip from The Ben Shapiro Show. If you did, go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you stay up to date with all our future content.